This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Donald Nisbet, the leader of the Transition Assistance Team. NNOA veterans volunteer on TAT and offer a plethora of experiences in nonprofit, profit, government, entrepreneurship, and academia. We're fortunate to have senior executives from a variety of professional backgrounds who have volunteered to share their experiences and advice in support of NNOA members facing transition. Leaving the military can be an incredibly intimidating experience, especially if service is all you've known for most of your adult life. Knowing what obstacles lie ahead can help you avoid pitfalls and manage your expectations. Tonight, we're honored to have Lieutenant Colonel John Bacon share his experiences with us. But before we hear from him, I'm going to turn it over to Colonel Asen Dahady.
Hey, good evening, everyone, and I am honored to be here. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you my friend, my brother, my fellow Marine Corps officer, John Bacon. I'm going to try not to steal too much of his thunder tonight, but I am going to hit a couple high points. John began his early Marine career as an enlisted helicopter mechanic. And along the way, he became a material logistics officer. He then got into aviation supply as an aviation supply officer when I met him. John is a graduate of the Citadel, where he got a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, and he got his MBA from the Naval Postgraduate School in Material Logistics and Business Logistics. John continued to distinguish himself. He was the military advisor to Congressman J. Randy Forbes of Virginia, where he managed the congressman's committee priorities and did a lot of liaison, as you all know. He then commanded at the squadron level in Yuma, Arizona, where he commanded the MALS 13 squadron, where he and I spent a lot of time out there in Yuma. Upon his retirement, John was the vice president of supply chain for Mesa Airlines. Subsequently, he is now the vice president of client delivery at API. And along the way, John found time to be an adjunct logistics professor at Albany Technical College. So without any further ado, I will introduce my brother, John Bacon. John?
Hey, Oz, thanks for that. And to everyone out there in virtual land, appreciate taking some time out with me today. Just happy to share my journey, the success, the ups and downs and highlights of my career, what worked for me, because I'll never forget, transitioning out after doing basically the only job I've ever had as an adult for 27 years. Transitioning, through that and getting ready to start another career was a it was an intimidating experience, extremely intimidating, and it was confusing. And there's no one playbook that will work for everyone. Like I took a little bit from all the senior leaders and mentors I've had over the years, like Austin and a few others, to help guide me along the path. And also, I can't, sugarcoat it. A little bit of luck, a little bit of help from the man upstairs, Lord God above, guide me along the way. So I'll just start from the beginning. My military career started in 1994 when I first enlisted out of high school. Born and raised in Trenton, New Jersey. And here's the reason why I mention that is because you got to remember, I was born in 76, and so came of age and grew up in the 80s and 90s. And this was before the internet, before ways of communication that we had today. And my family didn't travel a lot. So I truly never knew what life was like outside of the tri-state area, Jersey, Philly, New York. And that Northeast vibe, that Northeast way of talking, swagger, however you might want to call it, was just the only life I knew. So it was a little bit of a culture shock when I joined the Marines and get exposed to other people from all parts of the country. And then lo and behold, get assigned as a helicopter mechanic, as Austin said. And my first duty station was at Camp Pendleton, California. So to go from New Jersey to Southern California and just see how people live life there was a culture shock, but it was a culture shock in a great way. It truly helped, broaden my horizon and keep my mind open about different ideas and ways of thinking. Served at Camp Pendleton for a few years, and then got picked up for a program called Boost. It's no longer available. It's called Broaden Opportunities for Officer Selection and Training in Newport, Rhode Island. They took me through a year-long college prep course, which led into the MECEP program, where I got to attend basically college full-time at the Citadel. Did 3.5 years there before earning my commission as a second lieutenant in 2001, and went from aviation mechanics to aviation logistics and supply chain as a military occupational specialty. From there, career progressed, multiple deployments. As you know, I got commissioned in 2001, so in December 2001, so right after 9/11. So multiple deployments to the desert and other places on the other side of the globe soon followed, along with other challenges. And then lo and behold, I found my way into a special program called the Congressional Fellowship Program. This fast forwards all the way to 2014 when I got selected, in 2015 when I served a year in Congress as the military fellow and advisor to J. Randy Forbes, who was the congressman from 4th District, Virginia, in the House of Representatives. And I'll say this was probably one of the most eye-opening experiences I've had in my career. I literally sat in his Washington, D.C. office every day, interacted with him and his staff, wore a suit and tie every day, and I only wore my uniform a handful of times that year. Because my job was to advise him and his staff on all military and veterans affairs matters. And, honestly, I got to say, despite what you see on the news, people in Congress actually work together a lot more than what they lead on. It's unfortunate that they don't allow that side of what goes on behind closed doors to be shown in the public. If they did, maybe we wouldn't have some of the craziness we have today, but I digress from that. After 2015, I went on to serve as the aide de camp for a year. Lieutenant General John Davis, who was the 3-star general deputy commandant for Marine Aviation. And then after serving with him and finishing up a tour at Headquarters Marine Corps, I closed out the last 2 years of my military career as the commanding officer of Miles 13, Yuma, Arizona, where I held command of approximately 800 Marines and sailors. And while the Congressional Fellowship is a close second, just having that opportunity to close my career out was absolutely the highlight of everything, because, hey, I come from, not the most humble beginnings, but, not the highest beginnings of when I first enlisted. So to go from where I started to where I finished, there's no way I would have ever been able to foresee some of these things coming very early on in my career. So I'm extremely grateful. I'm extremely blessed. And this is why I'm always happy to share anything and everything I've learned along the path. As they say, no rest for the weary. My retirement ceremony was June 25th, 2021. And then I started my new job as the Vice President of Supply Chain for Mesa Airlines on July 12th, the following month. So it was a quick transition once I secured that next step in my journey. And I'll get into some advice on that specifically a little bit later. Did that for 2 years. Now, you may or may not have heard of Mesa Airlines. When I was there, they were a regional airline carrier for United and American and also DHL. They've downsized quite a bit since I've left, and they're now only flying for American Airlines. But I did that for 2 years, from 2021 to 2023. And for the last year, I transitioned over to a company called API, which stands for Accommodations Plus International. It's basically what we do is we contract with various airlines and we manage their hotel room bookings for their flight crews on a day-to-day basis. They have their scheduled rooms, and then when flights get canceled, they need another room because they're no longer, ending their day in the city they planned on to. My company, that I work for now, handles that. Also, at any time during this discussion, I just say, hey, if you got a question, feel free to just speak up. Don't hesitate to wait to the end. You don't have to wait to the end. Just say something. Happy to stop where I'm at and address a few things. So first thing I'll say when it comes to transitioning to your military, out of your military career into the civilian world. I can't emphasize this enough. Get your resume done as soon as possible. And you don't have to wait until the very end. You don't have to wait until you've decided to retire. There's nothing wrong with updating your resume right now and keeping it updated as the years progress. Second, I will also say, get professional help. I already knew writing was not my strong point. I will drop this young lady's contact information in the chat. Her name's Akila Collins. She runs a resume writing service. I found her because she was former Army, and she does a great job of translating our military jargon into corporate American language. And I kid you not, when I got the first draft of my resume, I was floored by how good she made me sound. Now, I did physically everything that was on the resume, but there's no way I could have written this myself and made myself sound the way she did, on paper, and the way she translated our military words and lingo into corporate American language, which is very different. It's just very different. It's like saying you're speaking English, but you're speaking a different English versus speaking English in America versus speaking English in England or Australia or any other country where English is spoken. They have different words and terms for things. Second, I will say, think about where you want to work and what type of work are you looking for. Do you want to work for the government, continue working for the government as a GS employee? Do you want to work for the government as a contractor? Do you want to go to corporate America, or do you want to go to corporate America, or go into business for yourself? That's what a lot of people do. I will share a little bit of how I ended up going to corporate America because, like many people, I knew I didn't feel like I wanted to go the GS route. I had enough of working directly for the government, wanted to do something outside of that. So I just figured going to a government contractor would be my best option. Did several interviews with Pratt & Whitney, some with Lockheed Martin, and I had an actual job offer lined up with Bell Helicopter, or Bell Flight, excuse me, and Dallas Fort Worth. And that's where I was moving. Had my plans to move there, was looking for a place to settle down temporarily when I first got there. And lo and behold, I got a LinkedIn message from a headhunter that Mesa Airlines had hired to look for someone for this position that they were looking to fill. And here's another thing I highly encourage everyone. Never turn down a conversation, even if you're not interested in the subject, because you never know where it will lead to. Because this headhunter who hit me up on LinkedIn, actually was a Marine himself, on active duty himself many years ago, now works for this headhunting company. He said, hey, are you planning on retiring anytime soon? And are you interested in working from Mesa Airlines? And here is the job description. Now, for starters, at that point, I had never heard of Mesa Airlines. So I had to look up, find out who they were. But I definitely was willing to have the conversation of talking to him on a job that for a company I had never heard of, and would not have been searching for. But just by having that conversation with him, opened up the door to the place that I eventually ended up accepting their offer, their offer to, and turned down, and told Bell Flight, thank you for the offer, but I'll be settling down somewhere else. And that's just my personal journey, how I ended up in corporate America. Everybody's process is going to be different. I also encourage everyone to use your network, whatever professional network you have, when it comes to just letting people know. Say, hey, getting ready to retire soon. I'm looking for a new job. I'll take any recommendations you have. And trust me, you'll get a lot of recommendations. Okay. This leads us to my next point. Be patient. I drove, me and my now wife crazy. We were engaged at the time, with all the potential job leads I thought I had, that ended up being dead ends. But that's just simply part of the process. People will tell you about a job, you'll apply. I ended up interviewing I did a total of 8 different interviews for 3 different positions. And along the way, sometimes you'll interview for a position and you won't hear back from their HR department for another 3 weeks. And you're sitting in silence, waiting to hear what the next step's going to be. So this is where I just encourage everyone, be patient in the process. The earlier you start, the more you give yourself time to be patient in something, because it's one of those things. We live in a military world where there's a lot of things that are in our control. This is when you're stepping into a world where there's very little inside your control, and you just have to learn to go with the flow, ask the right questions, and figure out what you're going to do next. The next point, give yourself a break. Excuse me. Do your best to give yourself a break. As I said earlier, and if you missed it because you chimed in a little late, I had my retirement ceremony June 25th of 2021, and basically 3 weeks later was starting my first day at work, and in between had moved, get my son registered for school, all the other fun things that goes along with basically doing another PCS. I would have loved to have taken, and I was on terminal leave for my September 30th is my last day on active duty. So I was on terminal leave for another 3-4 months. It was great. Now it was great collecting 2 paychecks. I can't deny that. But at the end of the day, a little bit of mental downtime would have been beneficial, really beneficial. I say that because you all deserve it. You've been running hard, whether you've stayed in 20 years plus, or you just did 4 years, 6 years, you're still been working hard. You've been taking your family through a lot. You've been picking your kids up and dragging them from one school to another. Your spouse has had to leave one job, and lose their seniority at one position to start again from scratch at another position. If you have the opportunity to give yourself a break and enjoy that terminal leave, please do so. Do it for your own mental health. Do it for the sake of your family. I'll be the first to admit, I didn't do it because I was told that the job offer was on the table now and wouldn't be available, a few months down the road. So I had to make a decision. And while I don't regret that, I do just say it'll be beneficial if you have that option to do so. I can't stress that enough. Also, here's another thing that comes into play when it comes to the post-active duty world, your VA benefits. This is very important. I was a Marine. We are very hard-headed when it comes to taking care of our own physical health, and things of that nature. And to make it worse, when I was trying to transition, getting ready for retirement, I was also in command. And I was also in command during the height of COVID, and dealing with everything that came along with that. So I'll be the first to admit, I did a poor job of making sure that my VA benefit package was as tight as it should have been prior to submission. Now I did get it submitted in time, and I was able to get my veterans benefits to kick in, my disability benefits to kick in basically as soon as I was officially retired. But I had to refile, a year or so later in order to maximize those benefits, because there were a lot of things I was shortchanged on in terms of disability rating, some things that got overlooked, some things that I didn't put in my first package that I had to refile for. So I'm happy to say, a few years later, everything is taken care of. I got the disability rating I'm 100% satisfied about, but I could have done a better job. But once again, I was trying to do so at a time that was very chaotic in my personal and professional life, which, caused me to have some serious delays on that. But once again, so with that being said, over the course of your career, make sure you do a great job of documenting all of your ailments. You know, sucking them up, putting on a brave face only takes you so far. And trust me, you will pay a penalty for it later as you get older, and you start regretting wishing you took a better care of your body as you go on. So VA benefits, happy to answer any question on that one as well. And then last but not, well, this isn't last but not least, you know, I definitely want to hear from you all on here versus me just talking. It's the simple mantra that in NNOA you hear about, but it rings true in life. Mentor and be a mentor. I only got so far in my career because I had people like Asim Dehady and a slew of others that were willing to pour and invest into me, invest into my personal and professional life. And I do my best to never hesitate to give back in more ways than were given to me. You know, I've been retired for going on 3 years now, and I just wrote another letter of recommendation for one of my Marines that served under me. And I get these requests all the time, and I'm happy to fulfill these requests and provide this guidance to people I served with any time of the day of the week. It doesn't matter, because like I said, I wouldn't be here without them, and they wouldn't be here without me. And I'll just, without getting into too many details, as they say, iron sharpens iron. And you'll be surprised when you're, as a mentor, or I've had this happen with me. I call up mentors asking about advice for situations that I'm dealing with. And sure enough, a few years later, they're calling me asking for advice on almost the same thing, because now they're going through it. It's just how life goes. It comes full circle. These are things you put out in life. The energy you put out into this world, believe me, will come back to you. Now, I could talk all night. I could talk all day, but I'm actually here to hear your questions, find out what's going on for you, where you're at in your career, because everybody's different. You might be just starting your career, you might be just ending it, or you might be somewhere in the middle. Happy to open the floor up to anyone for some discussions.
So let me just jump in, and I'm showing 3 people that I recognize as members of the team, and if you're willing to speak up, we'd love to hear from you. I'm talking about Sonia, Chris, and Chelsea. I can call you out by name, and if you want to just tell us where you are on your journey, and to the extent that you know what you want to get out of this and hear from John. So let's start with Sonia.
Hi, how you doing? Am I off of mute?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. How's everybody doing today?
Doing great, thank you.
So I actually just retired from the Navy after 23 years and 7 months. So I retired on April 1st of this year. So it's been not quite 6 months since my retirement date. And I was just chiming in to see what information you guys had to put out. If there's anything that I might have missed along the way. I do have a question about VA benefits, because mine seems to be stuck in perpetual review mode. So if you have a contact for anybody that I can talk to, VA raters, that would be phenomenal. But yeah, actually, I'm a lifetime member of NNOA, and I unfortunately have been overseas for unfortunately, overseas for most of my career. So I've not been at an NNOA meeting for, it's been a minute, but I am a life member of NNOA.
No, that's great to hear. I will touch on 2 things. One, the VA benefit question you asked. You know, the VA, the process is long. I just will say that. So yes, you're stuck in the review process. What I can do is, you know, I'll put my phone number in the chat, my cell phone, and feel free to reach out to me. I do know one young lady that I served with many years ago that now works for the VA. I can put you in contact with her. And, you know, she might be able to assist you, but I can tell you this, being in review process, it is a long process. And then one day you find out they're about to give you your decision rating, and it just pops out of nowhere. It's just a long process. You know, I wish we could all have a better idea what goes on behind the green curtain at the VA. But I also see something on your profile picture that you're a Delta. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All
Spring
right. I
91.
say, go ahead.
I said spring 91.
All right. Well, I say Rue to the House of Coleman Love because this is another thing that a segue into another thing when it comes to, you know, finding out your journey post-military career. You know, I had the pleasure in spring, specifically March 13th of earlier this year, crossing into the greatest fraternity in the world, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So while a lot of people do that stuff and pledge into fraternities and sororities when they're in undergrad, you know, my journey was a very non-traditional. It took a lot of non-traditional steps, but I'm still happy to have, you know, found myself and to be embraced by other organizations outside of the military. But then there's a ton of military members inside all of these fraternities and sororities, so you find a lot of common ground.
Most definitely. Well, welcome to the D9.
Thank you. Don't haze the Neo too bad, okay?
Okay, Chelsea, I know we talked to you before and I saw your hand was raised. You want to come to me?
Yes, hello. So I just separated from the Navy last month. I did 8 years, so I literally just separated. I didn't retire or anything. I was able to find, you know, employment in the field that I was, you know, trying to go into. And I did the BDD claim, you know, which is the one that's like, you know, 180 days prior to you like separating. They awarded me, I have two main questions, I guess, but they awarded me 80%. So I'm just being completely candid here, guys. I'm sorry, but I don't know if I'm like overstepping my boundaries or anything. But they awarded me 80%. I had some things that they, you know, awarded me for, but
Hey,
they
Chelsea.
yes.
So just note that this is being recorded. So if you
Okay.
know, in perpetuity, and
Gotcha.
we can always talk offline.
Okay.
But,
I guess the main question I was gonna ask is because they basically, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of this. I'm used to like a claim being like what the claim is and then going for, or I've heard of it going to the appeal process, but they kind of told me like, this is your rating for now. And then they said for the things that were deferred, like I have to go to more, they already scheduled me for some of them, but more medical like exams. And then I'm going to get like a future rating, but I've only ever heard of like one rating and then appealing. Has anybody ever heard of that?
Yes, I can talk to a little bit about that. So here's the benefits of what you just described. So you have your rating now, and it just said, hey, but we want to send you to some other doctors to get reevaluated for these other things you're claiming. And we'll reevaluate those once you have those appointments. That is a very real process. It happened with me during my appeal process where I got my initial rating, I appealed, I got a second rating, and then I got a third rating to end off of that. That third one was a continuation of that first appeal.
Okay.
So it's the exact process I went through where they had to send me to some other doctors to get, you know, poked, prodded, and things of that nature. So as I just told Sonia, the process is long. It is not a fast process at all. I wish it was faster. You know, all I can say is that I've heard over the years. I remember when I first joined, talking to, you know, service members who have recently retired or were getting ready for retirement. It's definitely better than what it was, but it's still a long process.
Okay. They said that I could already start appealing some of the things, but I don't know if I should wait or like wait until my full like rating comes back, or should I already start appealing now, you think? I don't know.
Well, maybe, you know, I put my cell phone number in the chat. If you want to reach out to me offline, happy to talk. And you can, I think you've already had some conversations with Donald and things of that nature. Maybe you want to reach out to him. You know, it kind of depends on what you're waiting on, you know, and how much more you think there's out there. Everybody's is a little different. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then I have one more question. It's regarding like, cause I came in and they made me go to the blended TSP or the blended retirement plan. And I'm trying to figure out if I should keep my blended TSP where it is, or if I should roll it over into a Roth IRA. I don't think it's good for me to roll it over into a 401k with the company that I'm at, just because I don't know how long I'm gonna, be there. But I was just wondering the thoughts on rolling it over to a 401k. I'm sorry, into a Roth IRA, or just leaving it where it is.
No, I understand the question. I'm going to just say that, I would solicit some input from anyone else on the call, but I would just recommend speaking it to at least 2 financial advisors and getting their opinion on that.
Okay.
If you reach out to one, any one particular financial advisor might steer you towards their plans, but still at least talk to 2 different separate people, because there's a lot of people that that have that same question. But I would just really say talk to a financial planner, because that's another thing I did. Ladies and gentlemen, upon retirement, all things, I know it's been recorded. I have no problem sharing, some light details. I went through a divorce. I would say on the last 5 years of my time on active duty, and it in a crazy financial position. I'm not going to say a bad financial position, just not the financial position I envisioned myself being, at where I was in life. I'm fine now and everything. I financially recovered a lot, but I still needed to sit down and talk with some professionals that know more about, investments and things of that nature that I did, in order to get some good advice, because, and that's where you're just never being afraid to ask for help from people and get some advice is definitely for your benefit.
Thank you.
Say really quick, I just made a segue. I did put in the chat also. If you click on the chat, and you'll see a contact card, on there. That's the lady. Her name's Akila Collins. She has her own business, Resume Chop Shop. Once again, I just encourage you to use a professional resume writing service, because our military language and corporate American language is very, very different, night and day. We say the same thing, but we say it in 2 different ways. So it's not cheap. It is it can be a little expensive, but what she did for me, we also did, she did my LinkedIn page, which, as I said earlier, directly led to my first job outside of the Marines at Mesa Airlines, because the headhunter found me on LinkedIn, and the page was well organized and everything. And then second, we did interview coaching. And that's another thing the military just simply does not teach us. We don't interview for your next position in the military. You basically get a set of orders handed to you. Now, yeah, you might do some backdoor negotiating and talking to people and trying to get the position you want, but at the end of the day, no one sits you down across from the table and takes you through a formal interview process the way they do in corporate America. And that, that interview coaching I found to be tremendously valuable, because the way the questions were structured in her interview coaching was the exact way that they came at me from the various positions I interviewed for.
Awesome. Good stuff. All right, Chris.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to share your insights and experience. I'll say that I am currently not a member. I received a link to the chat from a classmate. I'm still on active duty. I'm at PME right now, so I've got one more assignment ahead of me, and then that's it. So I'm looking at about 2 years, 2.5 years out. So Chelsea actually asked the question I was going to, one of them, about the thoughts on TSP versus a private 401k. But my second question actually is about LinkedIn. So I have not set up any of that. But when, in your experience, and actually for anyone, when would you recommend setting up that LinkedIn page and kind of mechanisms to start reaching out, at least trying to put yourself out there before you make that transition?
Now, just like I can't sugarcoat it. Do it now. I had started my LinkedIn page many years ago when LinkedIn first came out, and I was like, sure, I'll try it, and I created it, but I really didn't do much with it over the years. And it wasn't until I was getting close to retirement that I started becoming more active on LinkedIn, and that I got with the resume service that we're talking about. And she went through my page and restructured everything just to make it a little bit more organized. And LinkedIn can be a little bit like Facebook and social media, just where you're sharing things, you're adding thoughts on things, and you're making connections with people. But there's absolutely no reason to wait to build your LinkedIn audience. Do it now. I'm not stressing it like you're behind the power curve or anything like that. I'm just trying to make the point. There's no reason to wait. And if you start it now, you're that much further ahead when it comes to the next steps on your journey. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Let me just jump in there real quick, and then I'll get to you, Ernie. So we actually, early in the year, we had a guy from LinkedIn, and there is a recording, Corey Boatwright. He kind of gives you the behind the curtain view of setting up your profile, what's happening both from the employer side, the hiring manager and what they're looking for in LinkedIn profiles, and then how to optimize your profile. But I want to kind of second what John said. You can have it all set up now and start working it. And there are a couple of push tiles that once you press the test, open to work being one of those, then all of a sudden, people come out the woodwork at you. Let's see here. Ernie.
We're gonna forget just because I took my hand down. You did good. I'm impressed. So anyway, the only thing I wanted to say was that's the purpose of having, the Fireside Chat. I'm the chair of the Veterans Committee, and basically, we're kind of twofold because NNOA's job is to help you be a successful officer, no matter what you're doing, and not necessarily move you out of the active duty realm. But if we want to be a whole service organization, we get people into the service, we take care of them, try to make sure that they're successful while they're in there. And then we want to take care of them and make sure that once they decide to take off the cloth of the country, that they're going to be successful there. So these conversations that we're having, even though you might be early career or mid-career, are things that you need to know because you can start building your exit strategy, then. You don't want to wait. And that's what John was saying. You don't want to wait till you're 1 year out or less and then thinking, okay, I'm going to finally get out, whether it's retirement or just separation from the service. So these are the tools that we need now to start building if we want to have a successful transition whenever we need the service. And not only that, what you're also doing is putting more tools in your toolbox because now you're connecting and interacting with other people. So I'm glad to see some JOs in some cases, just getting in, just put the information in your brain. You'll find out a little bit later on where and how to use it. And even in some cases, establishing those relationships to kind of make you and keep you successful as you move through life. So thanks for being on this one and asking for it. I even put it in the press in the Veterans Roundup. Most people think that's for veterans, people that get out of the service. It's not. It's for everybody because there's good information there. During the symposium this year, we had a speaker that came in and talked about TSP, what we should do with TSP, the blended TSPs, how to make those successful. Those are things that you have questions for when you're getting ready to separate, but it's things you should probably know even beforehand. So just kind of keep that in mind. Look at some of the things that we're going to be talking about in the Veterans Roundup. I send the Veterans Roundup not just to folks that have separated, but to everybody, all the membership. So there's no excuse for you not finding out information like this. And it's to your advantage to do exactly what you're doing, is giving a listen, seeing what's being able to be said and what you can pick out from it and establish those contacts. So again, thanks for that announcement.
There was a question, a medical question, and I see Isan, who's a retired doc, used to be on the med board. So, he was behind the scenes, although he's not VA. Sherpa, can you speak to just a little bit about the process and kind of share what any insight that you might have?
This kid, my guy. All right. Thanks for the, I just joined, so I'm not sure what the exact question was. Do you remember what the exact question was? Or
So one was, when to, there's some questions about appeal with the VA and, increasing your rating. I would say to Chris, who's 2.5 years out, start getting your medical record tight. Get those visits and get stuff documented, because the key is service connection. And you can always, until you die, whatever rating you have, unless it's 100%, you can go back to the VA to get that increase, as long as there's a service connection. So while you're in service, that ailment that only gets worse as you get older, you can, with additional information, get that rating increase.
Yeah.
So back to you, sure.
Okay, hey, I'll just add a couple of quick points. So, right where Biscuit was talking about the medical records. Now, the great thing about the MHS, the military health system these days, is that there is that one integrated MHS Genesis record. It was not the case, back in the day when we were all in paper records and all that. It made things a lot different. However, the one thing I would encourage you with MHS Genesis, but a lot of you might, go for civilian appointments, maybe a colonoscopy, maybe a neurosurgeon, you have all these different consults that you might not have. Do not expect that those automatically feed back to MHS Genesis. That's something that you just want to be on top of, because the great thing is, if you're in Cherry Point and you're seen at the military treatment facility, and then you go to San Diego, you're seen at the military treatment facility, all that stuff is in MHS Genesis. But what might not be there is the civilian stuff. And a lot of those civilian things, they tend to be specialists, so they tend to be, very specific, and they tend to be connected to a very specific condition. And that's the stuff that's really important that might not get there. So that's one point about the medical records, because the medical records are just really, really absolutely crucial. You said there was a gentleman who's 2 years out. So whoever that is, he's obviously thinking about, the transition. So that's great. I'm sure you already know about the benefits disability at discharge, BDD. That's something I would definitely recommend that everybody try to accomplish. And just real quick, BDD, if there's folks who don't know what that means, anywhere from 3 to 6 months out before your retirement date, you're able to start the process. And that's a very specific program called BDD, Benefits Disability at Discharge. It's supposed to work where that by the time you get out in 6 months, your claim is done. My last day was July the 1st, 2024. I did my BDD 5 months before, and I still have not finished my VA process. No fault of my own, but I didn't get my first appointment until 3 weeks before my separation date. So basically, I got out on July 1st. June was my first appointment, but I submitted my BDD back in February of 24. And I did I used the VSO, Veteran Service Organization, something else I'd recommend that you all use. Get that liaison to help you fill out your medical claims and submit that. So those are just a couple of quick things. And then after you get out, like Biscuit was talking about, again, hopefully your BDD is done, but if it isn't, you're always eligible to enter information into the VA system even after you get out, even if it's 5 years later, 10 years later. But you have to have those medical records are the key. If there's any specific questions, happy to see if I can try to answer any other specific questions. But I certainly don't want to hog up the time here. Thanks.
Well, I do want to just chime in with something you said about the providers outside of the military service, and that's something I went through between my first claim and my appeal. So my first claim, I had, seen a lot of military doctors for my knee problems, but I was having treatments done outside as specialists, getting some injections in my knee at, this one orthopedics in my last duty station in Yuma, Arizona. Those records did not make it into my first claim. So I had to physically call, get copies of those visits, those records, and those procedures that they did to me in his office. And that was part of my appeal process. Because like you said, you got the electronic system. I kind of had the hybrid. I had the first half of my career in 2 volumes of the paper records. and then the rest of my career electronically. But those providers I saw in the civilian world, those specialists I got referred to, did not have those records. So it was just, it's you individually on your own contacting those providers and making sure you get a copy of those records.
And just one last little really important logistical point. What I would encourage you all to do is as soon as you have those appointments, that's when you collect the records and just keep them for yourself. And then just about everybody these days has a patient portal, but you typically have to do something to access the patient portal. Like, you go out to the civilian orthopedic doc to get a knee injection. He's at, such and such orthopedic clinic. They have their own electronic medical record, but typically you have to just do a couple of steps, do the little request, put your social in or whatever. And I would encourage you, as soon as you have those, even before those appointments, boom, get it done, access the portal, download it, keep it on your own computer. And then the last thing, I'll give you my own example. I've had a significant amount of medical things I had to go through the last couple of years. One of the best things that I did was I kept it all in one system. And what I mean by that is I'm in the DC area. I go to Johns Hopkins. I need a neurosurgeon, which I did. Boom, Johns Hopkins. I need physical therapy, which I did. Boom, Johns Hopkins. I need an MRI. Boom, So Johns Hopkins, I'm not saying go to Johns Hopkins, but I'm just giving you a personal example. And the reason I bring that up is, and of course there's a patient portal. Everything that I've done has been at Johns Hopkins. So I only have to go to one place to get all my civilian stuff. And their patient portal is so easy. It's just, it's been a lifesaver. So if you can keep it all in one healthcare system, that's even better for you. So patient portal, healthcare system, collect the records as soon as you can, and boom. All right, I'll jump off my my horse here. Thanks.
That's important information. These are things, like I said, just getting my own records from the providers. I just didn't even think about it. And as I said, I was trying to retire. I'm in command. I'm dealing with COVID. It was just a host of things. But Anton, I see you got I see Ernie and Anton. I'm not sure who had their hand up first.
Anton did.
So Anton, you first.
Hey, thanks. Hey, first of all, John, thank you for what you shared. I don't know you, but I thought it was great, so I appreciate that. I'm also recently retired, maybe a year and a half ago, and I'm in DC as well, and I'm with Leidos. But just a couple of things. There's been a couple of conversations. The VA, first of all, from my experience, and I'm not an expert, but I would also recommend, if you're going through the VA process, to make sure that you're going through the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, for the disability that you're claiming, because you need to know what they're looking for, and it needs to be documented as such. So on some of my bigger claims, I definitely submitted a statement in support of the claim, so I could basically draw out when I was seen by the doctor for that thing, when I had the diagnosis or whatever the diagnosis was, but basically drawing it to the reviewer's attention, the thing that I was trying to claim. That's just a recommendation. But everybody that I talked to when I was going through the transition said, make sure you get your VA stuff done. But I think to Sania's experience, I also did the BDD, and initially I got a partial, resolution, and then the things that I expected to be easy were the ones that they said, hey, we're still reviewing these. So it took a while to get all that stuff resolved, for sure. But I think the one thing that you can do, and I'm not an expert on this, but you can submit an intent to file, which basically keeps your record open for a year post. If you're denied for something, you're basically letting them know you have a year to submit supporting documents. The other thing for my transition, again, I'm in DC. For folks that are still ready to transition, Hiring Our Heroes was a program that I used. It's part of SkillBridge, but if it's in your region, it's something to take advantage of if you have the time. Basically, you can do a fellowship with the company. The Chamber of Commerce, for like 15 different regions in the country, has a Hiring Our Heroes program 3 times a year. And it allows you to basically do, work for a company before you possibly join them. So that's something that was really great. And also, I think, John, you mentioned about interviews. There's a program called Candorful. If you Google that, they also offer like 3 interviews. There's another program that I used, ACP, American Corporate Partners, that offers mentorship, in the transition phase. So you can basically get a mentor in an industry that you're looking to go into either a year before or while you're doing the transition. So those are some of the resources. And again, being in DC, there's probably more resources than everywhere else, but a lot of those resources were very helpful for me. So the only other thing I'll say was the TSP comment. I'm not a financial advisor, but I know I had the same question. And I guess in general, TSP is a pretty good program. The only question you probably need to ask yourself is like the fees, if you can find better fees. And the fees are very low for TSP, but I have a brokerage account with Fidelity. So for example, my financial advisor at Fidelity, of course he's incentivized, but he said, if you roll your stuff over, if you pick one of our, index funds, the fees are like a quarter of what TSP offers. But I mean, we're talking about small margins, but that's just my experience.
Thanks for that. And there's one thing you said that I just want to explain because some people may not understand. You mentioned the intent to file, and this can work to your advantage. So when I got my first disability rating, and I needed to file an appeal, that intent to file is a very short form with the VA. You submit that, and that puts a timestamp on your appeal, saying that, hey, you notified the VA on this date. I think for me, it was June 28th, 2002. That I intended to, file an appeal. And then once you've got a year, you work on your appeal, you get all your other doctor appointments together. When they finally settle your claim, it gets backdated to that date of appeal, that the date of your intent. So when I got my updated rating, I got 18 months of back pay along with it. And trust me, that was a sizable chunk of money. It put a smile on my face. When I got not only did I get the disability rating I wanted, but I also got 18 months of back pay from it. So that's a huge thing when it comes to filing an appeal for your claim. Someone else had their hand up. I forget the name. I think it was
Hey, Ernie, I was just going to mention, Biscuit put in the chat that Navy Mutual Aid was a VSO. There are other VSO organizations out there that will help you with those claims without charging a fee. One of the speakers we had at the symposium was from NABVET, N-A-B-V-E-T. And I hadn't heard of them, but just briefly, but it's the National Association of Black Veterans. They provide you with a person that is trained in completing your VA claims. So these are other tools that we have available to us. I mean, you can always pay somebody to help you do that, but it's always, I think, a little bit easier to find somebody that you don't have to pay than does the same thing, if not better, to get you where you want to get when you're looking at your VA claims.
So you should never, ever have to pay anyone. I'll just give you a good news story. So I started down the BDD road, and there was a problem with my rep, so missed it by a couple days. And so then it became a regular submission. I retired on my last day on active duty, 31 October. So 1 November as a civilian. And by 17 November, that month, I had my initial rating.
What?
That's right. And then 3 weeks later, I had my final rating. So that's, that's the opposite end where, as an aviator, going to flight physicals every year. And so I had the record, and other than sniffles and, Sherpa keeping me met up, there was sufficient documentation to justify all of my ailments. And it's all musculoskeletal, if you hadn't figured it out. So, all right, Oz.
Hey, just real quick, just to jump in on VSO bit. Like John, I was in command, didn't pay attention to it, it was one of those things on my list, but somebody had made the recommendation that the VFW does a very good job. And I just nonchalantly sent my paperwork and filed whatever it was I needed to. And they came back with a list of items that I would have never considered. And so then this was in the DC area. So the VFW organization I used was huge because I was shocked at what they found in my medical record. And like Biscuit, I had, annual flight physicals. So everything was in one place. And so that was huge. I also appealed. And it's important that you follow through with those because every single item that I appealed was a bona fide item in my record. Sometimes they're denied, not because the condition doesn't exist, but because they just want you to go see a specialist. And like John indicated, never turn down a conversation, never turn down an opportunity to go see a specialist in that VA process. Over.
You know, could not agree more. And to those that are in the DC area, or if you ever pass through the DC area, if you're on your active duty journey, take advantage of everything that's at your disposal while you're there. I mean, it's the epicenter of everything dealing with the U.S. government. So once and a lot of the VSO, their headquarters are somewhere in the DC area, DMV area. It's just a great place to be at when it comes to taking advantage of the opportunity where you're physically located at.
Awesome.
So I don't know if there's a time limit or anything, but I'm still happy to keep talking. Anybody has questions?
Hey, this is Sonia Waters. Can I just chime in real quick about the medical stuff?
Yes.
Because I'm also a physician. Keep in mind, people that are getting ready to retire, you actually have 2 EMRs. You have one in Alta and one in Genesis, if you're still in. Don't forget about getting your Alta record put onto a CD before you retire, because at some point, I'm not convinced it's all going to be there. So those that, when you came in, if you are old enough, you have a paper record, like I do. And then you have a record that's in Alta, and now we've moved on to Genesis. There is a little bit of crosstalk, but I'm not convinced that all of it makes it over to Genesis. So at some point, I'm not convinced that all of it's going to be there. So if you have an Alta record, don't forget about that when you're getting your medical records together. Over.
Hey, Sonia,
No, so you're
where are you, Sonia, and what's your discipline?
So I'm actually in Panama City, Florida currently. My discipline, undersea medicine and orthopedic surgery. And
Oh,
yes,
right.
we met at AMSIS, Isan, like, I don't know, several years ago.
Oh, okay. That's right.
It was several years ago we met.
That was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. But yeah, at that time I was in orthopedic surgery. I went back to diving medicine. I finished up my last tour was experimental diving unit as a senior medical officer.
Oh my goodness. I just sent you a LinkedIn.
Tanya, that's great advice, and I will go one further. And this is Captain Barnes. I'm old school. I took all of my electronic stuff and printed it out hard copy because I didn't want the electrons to get lost somehow. And when I left and filed my VA claim, it was about 8.5 inches thick binder, because you have to supposedly turn your records in when you retire. But I didn't trust the trons. I got the CD. I got all the hard copy records that existed and printed them all out into one big 6-inch 3-ring binder. And I think that was, for me, that was a lifesaver in many respects.
You know, something else I learned in my journey, Sonia was just talking about. So you can, for those of you still on active duty, you have the right to download a copy of your medical records right now. And that was something my flight surgeon and my last squadron showed me as I was getting ready to retire. So like she said, we've had different systems over the years. Who knows what system is going to be, in place 10 years down the road. And everything and what translates over. So by all means, download a copy of your records now, just to maintain for yourself. Put it on your hard drive at home or somewhere in a secure, location. I'm not gonna say the cloud is a bad place to store it, but just make sure you store it somewhere.
Awesome. So as we round out the hour, I want to thank John. This is probably one of the best fireside chats. They only, like Captain Barnes says, it's like each time they get better and better. And I want to thank everybody for participating. And I want to use my executive privilege to foot stomp a couple things. That network, because you're not going to get the job through your own efforts. It's going to be that secondary network, not even the people that but it's the people that they know. And the VA benefits, that's real money. So if you think, oh no, I'm fine, even 0% is a rating. And so I would just invite everybody to, take advantage of the benefits that you've earned as a condition of service.
I echo Biscuit. I've been looking for a job, haven't been able to quite find one as yet. So if anybody has a job for an old flight surgeon, family medicine guy, let me know.
I would suggest looking at the FAA with the aviation medical examiner. They need those folks.
Yeah, I applied there. It's been painful. USA jobs, man.
Okay, so Mike, if you want, we can stop the recording. And